Far beyond the known stars, in a dark corner of the galaxy floated the Zareth Dominion's research station. It was enormous, a structure of shining metal and glass orbiting a barren, lifeless planet below. To the Zareth scientists, this station was more than a laboratory. It was the place where they would finally create perfection. For centuries, they had tried to engineer the ultimate warrior, a being stronger, faster, and smarter than humans, but every attempt had failed. Inside the station, the corridors hummed with machinery. The air was cold and sharp, carrying the faint scent of ionized metal. In one of the central laboratories, a group of alien scientists hovered over a glowing incubation chamber, their long angular forms bent over control panels, fingers brushing against holographic screens. "This will be our last attempt," said the chief scientist, Clyron. His voice was calm but carried the weight of years of frustration. "We cannot fail again. This one must succeed." Another scientist, Virel, nodded, her large eyes reflecting the swirling data before her. "The human genome has been integrated with our enhancements. The simulations show high potential, but there is still risk." Clyron's thin lips pressed together. "Risk is inevitable. But if this one succeeds, she will surpass all previous creations, and finally the humans will have no advantage over us." The incubation chamber pulsed with a soft blue light. Inside, suspended in liquid, was the last experiment, a human child designed for perfection. Unlike ordinary humans, her cells were engineered to adapt, to learn faster, to process information with the speed of the most advanced Zareth computers. Her eyelids fluttered. The scientists leaned closer. "Awakening," Clyron murmured. The liquid drained and she emerged, standing tall in the chamber, her small body perfectly formed. She was human in appearance, yet something about her presence was different. An intensity in her eyes that seemed to see beyond the chamber, beyond the station, beyond even the scientists themselves. "Observe her carefully," Clyron commanded. "Every reaction, every thought. She is ours to shape, and she must obey." Virel hesitated, sensing something she could not explain. She seems aware already." "Too aware for a newborn." Clyron ignored her comment. "She is designed to learn. Intelligence is not the problem, it is control. We will teach her control." Days passed, though on the station time was a strange concept. The child grew faster than any human should. Within hours, she could walk, speak, and understand complex instructions. She asked questions, not questions a human infant would ask, but questions that hinted at deep curiosity and observation. "Why do you do these experiments?" she asked one day, her voice soft but firm. "Why do you test me like this?" The scientists exchanged uneasy glances. No human had ever spoken like this so early. Clyron crouched to her level. "We are teaching you, guiding you. You must learn to control your strength and your mind. That is your purpose." "I do not want to just learn," she said. "I want to understand. I want to know why everything is the way it is." Virel felt a shiver run down her spine. The child's words were polite, respectful, but there was a spark of independence in them. A spark that could not be ignored. As the days turned into weeks, the scientists tested her abilities. In simulated combat, she could defeat the most advanced Zareth prototypes without effort. She solved complex tactical simulations faster than the station's computers. Every failure of the past seemed distant compared to her brilliance, yet she did not boast. She did not show cruelty or aggression. She observed, learned, and adapted. When a machine malfunctioned, she repaired it using knowledge she had only just acquired. When she spoke to the scientists, she did so with a calm authority that made them pause without realizing it. Clyron began to notice the subtle ways she challenged him, not directly, but in small actions. She would complete tasks in ways he had not intended, always more efficient, always more creative. Yet she never disobeyed openly. "She is exceptional," Clyron said one evening as he reviewed her performance logs. "Perhaps too exceptional." Virel's eyes widened. "Too exceptional? What do you mean?" "I mean," Clyron replied slowly, "that she thinks. She does not just follow instructions. She analyzes, she predicts, she adapts. This was not in the parameters we set. We must watch carefully. Intelligence without obedience is dangerous. But the child was not dangerous, at least not in the way the scientists feared. She was curious, yes. Independent, yes. But she had no desire to harm. Her understanding of the world, even at this early stage, was about observation and learning. Yet the very act of thinking beyond control made her dangerous in the eyes of the Zareth. One night, the station experienced a power surge. Lights flickered, alarms sounded. Machines shut down and restarted. Most creations would have panicked, waiting for guidance. She acted. Quietly, methodically, she navigated the dark corridors, stabilizing systems, recalibrating machinery. By the time the scientists arrived, the emergency was resolved. She saved the station, Varel whispered in awe. Clearin nodded, but his expression was troubled. Yes, and she did it without instructions. That is precisely the problem. The child watched the scientist from a distance. She did not feel fear or anger, only curiosity. She wondered why they were so focused on control, why they treated her as a tool rather than a being. She began to question the very rules they had imposed, even if she did not voice it. In the days that followed, she explored the station further. She discovered hidden archives, old experiments, and records of failures, creatures that had been destroyed, abandoned, or deemed useless. She learned that every being before her had been a step toward perfection, yet none had achieved it. And now she understood why she was different. She was not just designed to follow. They had created her to surpass. One evening, as the station orbited silently above the barren planet, she stood at a viewing window staring at the stars. "Why do they fear me?" she whispered to herself. "I only want to know. I only want to grow." Her reflection in the glass stared back at her, human yet somehow more aware, more alive, more capable. And in that moment she realized something. The very beings who had made her for their control had underestimated what it meant to be human. In the labs, the Zareth scientists debated her future. Clyron wanted stricter tests, tighter control. Varel hesitated, feeling unease she could not explain. The child was their creation, yes, but already she was proving that she was more than what they had intended, and she knew it too. By the time the first part of her life as the final experiment ended, it was clear. She was not just a test. She was something entirely new, something that could not be confined by instructions or boundaries, something that could surpass the very creators who had made her. And deep inside, a quiet determination began to grow. One day she would show them, not with violence, not with rebellion, but with intelligence, insight, and strength, that humans were capable of greatness beyond imagination. For now, she watched and learned, patient and observant. Every movement of the scientists, every flaw in the station, every overlooked detail became part of her understanding. She was still their creation, still their last experiment, but even as she obeyed, even as she learned, the seeds of something greater were already growing within her. The stars outside sparkled with possibility, and she felt more than anything that her journey had only just begun. The station hummed with quiet efficiency, but for the child, life had become more than tests and observations. She no longer merely followed instructions. She watched, listened, and learned in ways the Zareth scientists had not anticipated. Every day, she absorbed knowledge from the databases, from the simulations, and even from the subtle behaviors of the aliens around her. It started with small observations. She noticed how Clyron's thin lips tightened when he was frustrated, how Varel's eyes shifted nervously when she doubted a decision. She saw patterns in their behavior, the same mistakes repeated over and over, and she began to understand something profound. These beings were not invincible. They were brilliant, yes, but flawed. One morning, as the light from the distant sun filtered through the observation windows, she approached Varel with a question. "Why do you always follow Clyron's orders?" she asked, tilting her head. Varel blinked. "Because he is the chief scientist. It is his responsibility to guide me. But what if he is wrong?" the child asked. Her voice was calm, but there was a quiet challenge in it, a hint of something beyond simple curiosity. Varel hesitated, unused to such questions. "Then we correct it, but he is usually correct." The child studied her carefully. "Usually?" she repeated. "That means sometimes he is wrong. Then why must you obey?" Varel had no answer. The question lingered between them, and for a moment the child felt a thrill of understanding. Observation alone could reveal truths even the Zareth had overlooked. Days passed, and she continued to test her abilities. In simulated combat scenarios, she not only defeated the most advanced prototypes, but did so with tactics the Zareth had never designed. She anticipated movements, predicted strategies, and adapted in ways no computer could match. Yet she never sought to humiliate her instructors. Her purpose was understanding, not destruction. One evening, during a particularly complex simulation, she paused. The scenario was meant to test her reaction to multiple enemies attacking simultaneously. But instead of following the programmed sequence, she altered the parameters subtly, creating a new scenario where she faced a situation the Zareth had never imagined. She solved it flawlessly, completing the challenge in record time. Clyron studied the results, his face tightening with a mixture of pride and unease. "She is improving faster than anticipated," he muttered. "Too fast. She is already surpassing the parameters we set." Virel, standing beside him, nodded slowly. "She is learning not just to react, but to think. She sees beyond our designs." The child, unaware that she was being observed, smiled faintly to herself. For the first time, she felt the subtle thrill of independence. She had not disobeyed, but she had chosen a path of her own thinking. Later that night, she wandered through the station's corridors. The lights were dim and the hum of machinery filled the air. She paused at a small storage room and noticed a series of sealed containers. Curiosity urged her forward, and with careful hands she opened one. Inside were the remnants of past experiments, creatures that had failed, discarded because they were imperfect. She studied them carefully. Some were malformed, some were too aggressive, and some simply had not learned fast enough. She realized then that she was different. She had been created as the final test. Yet unlike them, she had not been destroyed or abandoned. She had been given a chance to grow, to learn, to surpass. A question arose in her mind. Why had they chosen her to succeed? The answer was simple yet troubling. The Zareth were arrogant. They believed they could control everything, even the mind of a human. They had underestimated the one thing they could not predict, her ability to think independently. The next days brought new challenges. The scientists designed scenarios meant to test her loyalty, her obedience, and her ability to follow orders under pressure. Each test was more difficult than the last, yet she excelled, not through strength alone, but through strategy. She learned to manipulate simulations subtly, creating outcomes that revealed weaknesses in the Zareth designs. One afternoon, Clyron approached her during a test. "Why do you always finish so quickly?" he asked. His tone was measured, but his eyes betrayed a hint of fear. She looked up at him, calm and composed. "I do not just follow instructions. I observe. I learn, I adapt. That is what you taught me," Clyron frowned. "You're not just learning. You are predicting, you are changing the simulations themselves." "That was not part of the plan." She tilted her head. "Is the plan more important than understanding?" For a moment, Clyron had no response. The words echoed in his mind, a challenge he had not expected from his creation. As weeks turned into months, she grew not only in skill but in awareness. She began to understand the station itself, the hidden passages, the overlooked maintenance systems, even the minor flaws in security protocols. She realized that she could move through the station unnoticed, gather information and understand the full scope of her environment. One night, she ventured into the central control hub, a place the scientists rarely allowed her to access. The room was vast, filled with glowing panels, holographic displays, and streams of data flowing like rivers of light. She touched the controls gently, absorbing information at an astonishing speed. Every system, every program, every database was open to her. She realized she had more knowledge at her fingertips than any single Zareth scientist. But knowledge alone was not enough. She began to test her limits, pushing the boundaries of what she could do without alerting the scientists. She repaired systems that had been offline for years, optimized simulations in ways the Zareth had never imagined, and even predicted minor errors before they occurred. Virel, noticing subtle changes in the station's performance, approached Clyron one morning. "Something is different," she said. "The station functions better, more efficiently. But it is not our doing." Clyron's eyes narrowed. "She is learning more than we intended. She is independent." The child from her corner of the station observed them silently. She understood now that they saw her as a tool, as a creation to be used and controlled. But she also understood something else. They had given her the ability to surpass them. Every flaw they overlooked, every detail they dismissed became part of her knowledge. Her awakening was not sudden. It was gradual, a steady growth of understanding and insight. She began to see the larger picture, the weaknesses of the Zareth, the limitations of their technology, and the underestimation of human potential. She realized that she was no longer just their creation. She was a new being, capable of thought, strategy, and vision far beyond what they had imagined. One evening, as the station orbited silently above the barren planet, she spoke quietly to herself. I am more than a test. I am something new, something they cannot control. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond the laboratory, a future where she was not confined by rules, simulations, or instructions, a future where she could explore, learn, and perhaps even teach others the lessons she had discovered. And in that quiet moment, she made a decision. Not a loud, defiant choice, but a subtle, determined one. She would continue to learn, to grow, and to prepare. One day she would show them that humans were capable of greatness beyond what even the Zareth could imagine. For now, she observed. She listened. She learned. And every day her understanding deepened. Every flaw in the station, every overlooked detail in the simulations, every weakness in the scientists' methods became part of her growing intelligence. She was still their creation, still the final experiment. But she was awakening to knowledge, to understanding, and to the realization that she was not just a tool. She was something more, something powerful, something human, something extraordinary. The station had grown quiet under the distant light of a dying sun, but the child's mind was far from still. Every day she explored more, learning not only from the databases and simulations, but from the very structure of the Zareth Dominion's research station. Every corridor, every hidden passage, every maintenance hatch became part of her understanding. She could move through the station almost unnoticed, gathering information that the scientists assumed was beyond her reach. She had learned quickly that knowledge alone was not power. Understanding systems, predicting behavior, and acting at the right moment were equally important. The more she observed, the more she realized that the Zareth were brilliant but limited. They relied too heavily on technology and logic, and they overlooked the unpredictable, creative thinking that made humans so adaptable. One day, while reviewing a complex simulation, she discovered a hidden protocol within the station's security system. It was designed to trap any creation that tried to access certain areas, a safeguard the Zareth had never revealed. Most beings would have triggered it immediately and been contained. She studied it carefully, understanding how it worked, how it could be bypassed, and then she smiled quietly. This will be useful later, she murmured to herself. Her actions were subtle at first, small manipulations of simulations, minor adjustments to systems, tiny shifts in outcomes that the scientists would never notice. She learned to hide her true abilities, to obey externally while acting independently internally. Every move she made prepared her for a time when she would need to take control fully. Virel had noticed the changes. Clyron, she said one day, I think she is evolving. Her performance is improving, but in ways that are not just learning. It is as if she is thinking beyond our tests. Clyron's expression was dark. Yes, that is exactly the problem. She is unpredictable, and intelligence without obedience is dangerous. But she did not see herself as dangerous, not yet. She only understood that she had potential. And with that potential came a responsibility to use it wisely. She began to explore areas of the station that were supposed to be off limits, carefully avoiding detection. She studied the engineering rooms, the prototype starships, the communication arrays. Everything was knowledge waiting to be used. During one of her explorations, she discovered the station's prototype starship. It was unlike anything she had seen before, sleek, powerful, equipped with advanced Zareth engines and navigation systems. Her pulse quickened as she examined it. If she could operate this ship, she could leave the station, and with it, the constraints of the scientist's control. She spent weeks learning the ship's systems in secret. Every button, every panel, every interface became familiar. She practiced in simulations, running tests in her mind, imagining escape scenarios and tactical maneuvers. By the time she felt ready, she could operate the vessel with precision far beyond what the Zareth themselves could achieve. Meanwhile, the scientists grew increasingly confident and increasingly blind to her independence. They believed they controlled every aspect of her development. But she had already begun to plan. She did not want revenge. She did not want chaos. She wanted freedom, and the freedom of knowledge that came with understanding the universe beyond the station. One evening, as the station orbited silently above the barren planet, she approached Clyron. "I have completed today's tests," she said politely. Her calm voice hid the storm of preparation within her mind. Clyron nodded, unaware of her growing intentions. "Excellent. Your progress is remarkable. You continue to exceed our expectations." She paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I am learning," she said. "And I want to learn more. To understand more than what these tests allow." Clyron frowned. "Learning is important, yes. But control is more important. You must follow instructions precisely." She inclined her head, a gesture of respect, but inside her mind raced. Control had been their gift to her and their mistake. Every system she had studied, every flaw she had observed, every weakness they had ignored was part of her growing understanding. The time to act was approaching. A few nights later, an emergency was simulated by the station's AI, another test of her abilities. The simulation was designed to trap her, to see how she would react under extreme pressure. But she did not panic. She calmly navigated the system, bypassing security protocols and stabilizing the station's critical systems. By the time the scientists arrived to observe the results, she had already solved the challenge. Virel approached her, a mixture of awe and fear in her eyes. "How did you do that?" she asked softly. "I observed," the child replied simply. "I learned. I adapted." Clyron's voice was sharp. "You are growing beyond our control. We must act carefully." But it was already too late. She had observed them too, learned their routines, and understood the vulnerabilities in the station's defenses. She had studied the prototype starship, mastered its systems, and even predicted minor flaws in the station's power grid. She was ready. One quiet night, when the station's corridors were empty and the hum of machinery was the only sound, she made her move. She navigated through maintenance tunnels, avoiding cameras and sensors she had already calculated. She reached the starship's docking bay, her hands steady as she powered up the engines and initiated pre-flight sequences. The vessel came to life with a low hum, lights flickering as systems calibrated. She moved through the cockpit with precision, her knowledge of the ship surpassing even the engineers who had designed it. Every calculation, every maneuver, every potential problem had been anticipated. She was ready to leave the station and nothing could stop her. But she paused before taking off. She looked back at the station, at the laboratories where the Xerath had created her, observed her, and tested her. She felt no anger, no desire for revenge, only understanding. They had made her, yes, but in doing so, they had underestimated what it meant to be human. They had created independence, creativity, and intelligence, and those were qualities they could not control. With a deep breath, she activated the ship's engines. The docking bay doors opened, and the vessel moved smoothly into the void of space. The stars stretched before her, infinite and bright, filled with possibilities she had only dreamed of. She felt a thrill of freedom, a sense of destiny. She was no longer confined by the station, by the scientists, or by the simulations. She was her own being now, with the ability to explore, learn, and grow beyond what the Xerath had imagined. As she navigated through the station's outer defenses, she reflected on what she had learned. Knowledge was power, yes, but understanding and adaptability were far greater. The Xerath had relied on control, on rules, on their superior technology, but they had overlooked the human ability to think differently, to see possibilities where none seemed to exist. Her journey had only just begun. She did not yet know what lay beyond the stars, but she knew she was ready to face it. Every skill she had learned, every observation she had made, and every flaw she had discovered would guide her. She would not seek to destroy the Xerath, but she would surpass them. And one day she would show them that humans, underestimated and dismissed, could achieve greatness beyond their imagining. For now, she focused on the present, the ship, the stars, the infinite possibilities ahead. She felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of purpose. The first steps of independence had been taken, and with each passing moment she grew stronger, wiser, and more capable. In the vast emptiness of space, she looked ahead with determination. She was no longer the final experiment. She was a being of her own making, intelligent, adaptable, and free. And with that freedom came responsibility, to explore, to understand, and to grow in ways the Xerath could never have predicted. The stars beckoned endless and bright, and she felt, for the first time, the full power of her potential. The journey to knowledge, freedom, and greatness had begun, and nothing, not the Xerath, not their technology, not their arrogance, could stop her now. The Zareth Dominion had ruled the galaxy with arrogance and precision for centuries. Their technology was unmatched, their discipline absolute, and their strategies nearly flawless. But they had forgotten one thing. The human spirit was unpredictable, creative and unstoppable when combined with intelligence. The child, now a young leader, approached the borders of the Zareth-controlled systems. Her ship moved silently, carrying her knowledge, her allies, and a vision of change. She did not seek destruction. She sought understanding, unity, and the opportunity to demonstrate that humans could surpass even the most powerful race in the galaxy. Her first encounters with Zareth forces were cautious. Scouts and patrols approached her ship, wary of this human who had become a legend in their absence. But she did not attack. She communicated, demonstrated strategy, and outmaneuvered them without unnecessary violence. Every action revealed not aggression but superior intelligence. Word of her presence spread quickly. The Zareth Council convened, alarmed by reports of a human moving freely within their territory, unchallenged and unafraid. Claren, once her creator, stood before the council. "We underestimated her," he admitted. "She is no longer a creation, she is something far greater." The council members whispered among themselves, uneasy. Many had always dismissed humans as weak and fragile. Now the evidence before them challenged centuries of belief. The child did not seek war, but she was prepared. She understood the Zareth tactics, their weaknesses, and their reliance on predictable strategies. She had studied them as carefully as they had studied her. Her allies, alien factions she had united through respect and collaboration, stood ready. Together they formed a force that combined human ingenuity with alien resources, intelligence, adaptability, and strategy that the Zareth could not anticipate. When the time came, she presented herself to the Zareth Council, not as a conqueror, not as a threat, but as a being who could show them a new way. She spoke calmly, clearly, and confidently. "You have ruled for centuries with precision and technology," she said, "but your reliance on control, predictability, and fear limits you. You overlook creativity, morality, and adaptability. Humans, underestimated for so long, have potential beyond your calculations. And I am here to show you that potential is not a threat. It is a path to greatness." The council was silent, struggling to process the words. For the first time, a human stood before them, not as a creation to be studied, but as a leader, a teacher, and a force beyond their control. Her arguments were precise, logical, and compelling. She demonstrated the flaws in their strategies, the gaps in their knowledge, and the benefits of collaboration. She showed how her united allies could achieve more than any single Zareth faction, not through violence, but through intelligence and vision. Slowly, the council began to see the truth. Their arrogance had blinded them, and now they faced the undeniable reality. Humans were capable of greatness. This one human, born as an experiment, had surpassed everything they had known. In the days that followed, she negotiated with the council, not with threats, but with clarity. She offered solutions, guidance, and the promise of progress. The Zareth, realizing the limits of their old methods, accepted her vision. And so she rose, not as a conqueror, but as a ruler respected for intelligence, foresight, and wisdom. The very beings who had intended her as their final experiment now looked to her for guidance, understanding that their creation had become something beyond their control. Her allies celebrated, not because of victory in battle, but because of the new possibilities she had opened. The galaxy was no longer ruled solely by force. It was guided by intelligence, morality, and vision. She stood on the bridge of her ship, looking at the stars. She thought of the station where she had been created, the scientists who had watched her grow, and the journey that had brought her here. She had learned, adapted, and inspired. She had proven that humans, underestimated for so long, could achieve greatness beyond expectation. And as she gazed into the infinite cosmos, she realized that her journey was far from over. She had become the first human to rule the galaxy, not through fear or force, but through wisdom, unity, and intelligence. The future was bright, full of challenges and discoveries, and she was ready. The stars stretched endlessly before her, and she felt the quiet thrill of possibility. She was human, extraordinary, and unstoppable, and the galaxy, vast and infinite, was now hers to guide. The void of space was vast, silent, and full of possibilities. The child, no longer just a creation but a being of remarkable intelligence and independence, navigated her ship with precision. She left the research station behind, the stars ahead glittering like a promise of freedom. She had no destination yet, only a purpose: to learn, understand, and explore beyond the limits imposed by the Zareth Dominion. As she traveled, she encountered other worlds, planets with civilizations she had never seen, alien societies with customs and rules far different from the Zareth. Some were primitive, others advanced, but all had one thing in common: they underestimated humans. Her appearance alone sparked curiosity and caution. To the aliens, humans were weak, fragile, and inferior. She quickly learned to use that misconception to her advantage. Her first encounters were cautious. On one desert planet, she encountered a merchant ship being attacked by space pirates. The pirates were well armed and organized, but she approached with calm precision. Using knowledge of tactics and strategy, she disabled their weapons and rescued the merchant crew without unnecessary destruction. The aliens who had witnessed her actions were amazed. "She fought like no human I've ever seen," one remarked. "And she did not destroy, only defended." She smiled quietly, understanding the deeper lesson. Power was not only about strength, it was about intelligence, morality, and the ability to inspire trust. Word of her deeds spread quickly. Across the stars, whispers spoke of a human who could outthink the Zareth, who could navigate battles without violence, and who possessed an uncanny understanding of strategy. Alien factions began to take notice. Some were curious, some wary, and others saw an opportunity. On a heavily industrialized world, she encountered a group of alien engineers oppressed by a corrupt faction. They had advanced knowledge but were restricted by rules and bureaucracy. She observed their plight and offered guidance, showing them ways to improve efficiency and solve problems without confrontation. Slowly, they began to trust her. "They are clever," she said, studying their designs, "but they lack vision. Together we can do more." Her human traits, empathy, curiosity, adaptability, set her apart. The aliens had never seen someone combine intellect with morality. They began to rally around her, not out of fear but respect and admiration. She taught them new strategies, shared knowledge of systems, and helped them see possibilities they had never imagined. Meanwhile, the Zareth Dominion remained unaware of her growing influence. They assumed she had remained confined to the station or had been lost in space. Their arrogance blinded them to the fact that their creation was building alliances, understanding politics and uniting factions under her guidance. On a neutral space station, she met representatives from multiple alien societies. Tensions ran high, as centuries of distrust had created divisions. She observed the arguments, the stubbornness, and the fear. And then she spoke, not with force but with clarity. "Your disagreements are small compared to what you can achieve together," she said calmly. "You each have strengths but also weaknesses. Alone, you are limited. Together, you are unstoppable." Her words carried weight. She did not demand loyalty. She demonstrated it. She solved disputes, introduced strategies that benefited all, and showed the value of collaboration. Slowly, the factions began to see her as a leader, not because she commanded, but because she inspired. During her travels, she also began to study the Zareth Dominion's tactics, understanding their military strategies, their political structure, and their technological advantages. She realized that to truly surpass them, she needed not only allies but a vision that combined human ingenuity with alien knowledge. Her journey was not without challenges. Rogue factions attacked her ship, suspicious of her intentions. She faced natural disasters on planets she visited, technological failures, and moments of doubt, yet each obstacle only strengthened her understanding. She learned patience, adaptability, and the importance of foresight. By the time she returned to a key sector controlled by the Zareth, she had transformed. No longer a mere creation, she had become a symbol, a human who could unite, inspire, and lead. The factions she had helped were now allies, ready to follow her vision. Her reputation had grown to such an extent that even distant planets had begun to acknowledge her presence. And somewhere deep in the Zareth Dominion, Clyron and Virel began to notice anomalies. Reports of human ingenuity, leadership, and victories in distant sectors reached them. Clyron's eyes narrowed as he read the reports. "She is out there. And she is growing stronger," he said. "We created her and now she surpasses us all." Virel nodded, unease in her expression. "Perhaps we underestimated what it means to be human." The child aboard her ship felt the weight of possibility. She had learned to navigate the stars, unite factions, and wield knowledge in ways even the Zareth had not predicted. Her journey of awakening had transformed into a journey of leadership. She understood now that humans were not merely survivors. They were innovators, thinkers, and capable of achieving greatness when intelligence and morality worked together. And as she looked toward the stars, she felt a quiet determination. One day she would face the Zareth Dominion, not with blind aggression but with wisdom, strategy, and the support of those who believed in her vision. For now she focused on growth, alliances, and understanding the universe in ways the Zareth could never imagine. The rise to power was not just about leadership, it was about showing that humans underestimated for so long could achieve greatness beyond expectation. Her journey had only just begun,